historical context for Shakespeare. Shakespeare was born and wrote and had his career during the Elizabethan age, named for Queen Elizabeth, the famous Queen Elizabeth, one of the greatest of European monarchs. So, just a little bit about her and the context. Queen Elizabeth came to power right after an age of religious wars, so we have to go back in time a little bit. Her father was the famous Henry VIII. Henry VIII broke from the Catholic Church. He wanted a divorce because he blamed his wife for not giving him a son, and then his next wife and his next wife and his next wife, as if it was their fault. Pope said, no, you can't have a divorce. So he said, we're going to break from the church. Now I am the head of the Church of England. So major break. This is Protestantism coming to England here, and this is the early 1500s. And he says, everything's the same. He was actually a religious guy. He was a devout guy, didn't want to change the religion. But now he says, I'm the head of the church rather than the Pope. Well, as you can imagine, not everyone wants to suddenly go along with this, and it was probably about 50-50, half the country supporting him and the other half saying, no, we're Catholic, we follow the Pope. There was some turmoil. Eventually, he had a son who died, but then the eldest, the young son died. It was only king briefly, and then the eldest daughter, Mary, takes the throne, and Mary had been raised Catholic, and she said, actually, my dad was wrong. We're going to bring Catholicism back to England. And then Mary decides she's going to go and execute the officials who had previously supported the Protestant king. And she's known as Bloody Mary. And this is where we get the drink from, the Bloody Mary, because she ordered so many executions, trying violently to reinstate the Catholic Church in England. But then she died a couple of years later, and now the younger sister, Queen Elizabeth, takes the throne. And so we had this turmoil, and there were executions. And Elizabeth is considered to be a great monarch because she knew how to compromise. So she said, we will have the Anglican Church. Elizabeth, the younger daughter, had been raised Anglican or Protestant. She says, we're going to be Anglican, but it's going to be a moderate, tolerant Anglicanism. We're not going to execute or oppress the Catholics. That was it. To us, it seems very reasonable, but back in 1560, this was kind of a new idea to be tolerant. So that's one of her great achievements. And then one other thing to mention, and this happened when Shakespeare was a young man, the famous European date of 1588. 1588 was a naval battle between the British fleet and the Spanish fleet, the Spanish Armada. Spain had been the premier power in Europe, but after this naval battle, the British win the battle, they defeat the Spanish, and now it's the beginning of England's rise to power. England, compared to other European nations, is one of the smaller and at the time weaker ones. But now this is the beginning of England's rise to power. So this is what's going on as Shakespeare is growing up and is a young man. Shakespeare born 1564. So England is on the rise. That's the Shakespeare's context. England is on the rise. Peace at home because of moderate Anglicanism, and security because the English Navy is supreme. But this is all new in the 1580s. And then one last thing to note about the context, Queen Elizabeth loved drama. Acting and plays was something, there's always been acting and plays, but as a profession, it was new in the 1570s and 1580s. And she loved going to plays and commissioned the building of theaters, the Rose Theatre and the Globe Theatre in London. And we know from the historians that several Shakespeare plays, including Midsummer Night's Dream, which we are reading, were performed for the Queen. So not to take anything away from Shakespeare's genius, he's still a genius. He's still probably greatest writer, certainly in English. But he was there at a good time. England is good, there's peace, the country is rising, and the monarch loves your profession and is supporting drama and commissioning plays.